Welcome to Capital Currents, where the flow of business news and market trends keeps you ahead of the tide. I'm your watchdog, and today is Thursday, September 5th. Happy opening season day! The NFL kicks off tonight, and $35 billion is expected to be legally wagered this season, up 30% from last season. I'll start to keep an eye out on sports gambling stocks, which are all down for the year. In this episode, Japanese company Nippon Steel continues to make its case for US Steel, and Intel continues to struggle. September is already off to a bumpy start. The markets got crushed yesterday. The S&P was down 2% and the Nasdaq was down 3%. This was the worst day in the market since the sell-off that happened in the beginning of August. Concerns of a global economic slowdown are starting to trickle back up, and there is some concern about the AI bubble popping as well. Semiconductor stocks especially got wrecked. It was a sea of red across the board. Intel, AMD, Broadcom, Qualcomm, they were all down between 6 and 7%. The worst of it was Nvidia, which was down nearly 10%, losing $300 billion in market cap. That's the biggest one-day drop in history. By the way, $300 billion is like the entire market cap of Netflix. Nvidia lost that value in a day. There's levels to this game. It looks like September is living up to its reputation for being the worst month for the stock market so far. There is the jobs report that comes out on Friday. That report is going to tell us how many jobs were added to the economy last month. If that number comes out good, things could turn around. But if not, prepare for more red. Nippon Steel continues to make its case for acquiring US Steel for $14 billion. This deal has national security implications, as Nippon Steel is a Japanese company and is the third largest steelmaker, and it's trying to take over an American institution. There are current presidents, ex-presidents, and federal regulators actively preparing to block this takeover bid. Nippon Steel even detailed a policy stating that US Steel would remain a US company headquartered in Pittsburgh, and that the majority of its board would be made up of US citizens, and the core senior management would also be US citizens. And it reminded regulators that Nippon Steel has operated in the States for over 50 years. Nippon Steel also said there would be no transfer of any US Steel production capacity or jobs to outside of the US. These guys are willing to do whatever they can to make sure this deal gets through, but politicians are now involved here. Kamala Harris said that US Steel should remain domestically owned and operated. In August, Donald Trump said that he would block this deal if he was reelected. And as of an hour ago, sources close to Joe Biden said he's preparing to formally block the acquisition. Unfortunately, the biggest loser here is US Steel, as shares plummeted 18% so far. Intel is having a bad year, and it just continues to get worse. Reuters reported that Intel's latest delivery of chips to Broadcom were so bad that Broadcom said the chips were not ready for large-scale production. This is a terrible look for Intel as they try to compete with the big boys like TSMC. By the way, chip manufacturing is different than what Nvidia or Broadcom does. Nvidia and Broadcom, they design their chips, but it gets manufactured at a place like TSMC or Intel. Intel used to be one of the largest manufacturers of chips in the world, but these days they're struggling. Intel is supposed to receive $8.5 billion in funding and get access to $11 billion in loans from the US government as part of the CHIPS Act. But the issue is that Intel needs to hit certain milestone targets before being granted access to that funding. And unfortunately for Intel, they're dealing with performance issues and they don't have a quick fix for that. Intel lost $7 billion with its manufacturing business in 2023, and the company says that it's now cutting its dividends, they're cutting their R&D fund, and they're laying off 15% of its staff. The stock is down around 55% in the past 6 months, and because of poor performance of the stock, Intel might get kicked out of the Dow Jones index. Remember, the Dow Jones index is made up of 30 companies. They're a pretty exclusive club, but because of how bad Intel has been doing, experts think that it might get kicked out. Intel has been the worst performing stock in the Dow Jones so far, so if they do get kicked out, I wonder who's going to replace them. That's all the business headlines I have for you. Let's take a look at some stocks making moves. Shares of GitLab, which is a GitHub competitor, are surging this morning after they reported better than expected earnings. Revenue was up 31% and profits also came in higher than expected. The company raised their full year sales guidance and the stock is up 15% in reaction. On the flip side, Dollar Tree is struggling. A few days ago, we talked about Dollar General struggling. Now Dollar Tree stock is getting hammered after the company reported disappointing earnings and lowered their sales guidance. They cut their revenue forecast, blaming a challenging macro environment. Shares are currently down 22% and have fallen over 40% for the year. That's all for today's show. Keep navigating those waters and see you tomorrow.